If you haven't heard about the Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. The Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it's easy to be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi, man. How are you?
doing pretty. All right, well, let's get this thing started, bro. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special full episode of God Half Heart Wrestling. Feature yours truly, Jamel Honus. We are going to talk about today the women of wrestling from the era of 1907, which is pretty much the beginning of the Attitude Era, all the way until 2000, pretty much the kind of the end of the PG era, I guess, but Ruthless Aggression era. So this is an interesting topic because I really found this to be fairly true about the women's wrestling during that period, which was pretty mediocre because there wasn't really that much wrestling, but it was more showcasing their bodies more like in a Raw and Pain style match about these little fights. Just these quick 5-minute matches. And today we have a special guest here. He's from the non-wrestling chat. His name is Barry. How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm really good. Just I've been training all day. How have you been?
Doing pretty good myself. I've been working, wrestling, relaxation. All right, and women's wrestling that began in 1997 didn't really start that much because I think at the time during the beginning of the Attitude, there wasn't a women's championship belt. Like China that recently came in. Yes, Sable that was dipping her foot into the water. And of course you have Sunny, which was the most popular diva at the time. But what do you think about the woman that really started in that time period that wasn't wrestling but just being like a manager or an escort? Hello? Yeah. Barry, you there? Hello? Barry, you there? Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hello? Yes. Okay, now I can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me better? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not can hear you now. That was pretty weird. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back again. We have some audio technical difficulties, I guess I can call it, but yeah. But yeah, Barry, let me ask you something though. What do you think about the era of women as far as the wrestling business going back in 1907? Like the stars like China, Sable, Sunny.
Yeah, I think like I was saying, I think it's just really weird at that point because it was a lot of managers. Like you had a lot of these good women wrestlers that knew how to work, but they were really just that manager role. And I think what hurt it back then as well was the fact that in WWE the women's championship at that point was deactivated because of the Alundra Blaze kind of taking it to WCW.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Especially for 97 hit, you had Alundra Blaze, who was the forefront of the WWE's women's division at the time, until she had went on WCW Nitro in December of 95, I believe, or January 96. And coincidentally, threw the women's championship in the trash in front of live audience. That was pretty like crazy, but like it happened.
Yeah, I thought that time was just such a weird, that late 90s, early kind of modern women's division was so weird because there wasn't really any women to really watch, and it wasn't really that good to watch them in the ring.
That's true, definitely wasn't. And even like going forward, like with into the 1998, you had China associated with D-Generation X, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels at the time. And of course, you had Sable being the, I guess, manager of Mark Merrill, even though people wanted to see more Sable more than Mark Merrill, of course. You know, I guess Sonny's making her exit from the WWF at the time when it was called WWF back in '98. Even though she was managing I believe it was the Legion of Doom or the World Wars at the time because they had made their return to WrestleMania 14 in Boston. And it was just a weird time period because there was no women's wrestling matches, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think '98 there was only like two women's champions, so you had like Jacqueline and Sable, but like that's like just I think Deborah was the first one in '99, so it wasn't really you had anybody that was like a champion or somebody you could be like, this is like nowadays you can look in the ring and there's countless amounts of women that were just great in the ring, but back then I don't know if it was just they didn't know how to work as well as the men or they just weren't taught that.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely true. And it's like pretty cool because like even at the time before Jacqueline made her debut, we did get to see one match that was actually an evening gun match from the WF Unforgiven in Your House event between Sable and Luna. Even though it wasn't much of a competition because Luna did that evening gun match thanks to the artist formerly known as Goldust at the time. It was something as a start there, you know. It wasn't really too bad, but it was like I think the fans rather would have seen more wrestling rather than just a evening on match at the point, you know. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely going into that kind of period when it was like a lot of evening gown matches, brand panties matches, like just like back then, if you're anything like me, nobody really watched women's wrestling back in the '90s, early 2000s. It wasn't really like something you would go out your way to watch, but there is some good matches that happened at 2002 onwards.
that's true, definitely. I believe that one of my favorite women's championship matches when the women's championship got reinstated in '98 and Jacqueline was the first one to win it. I think by far, like if I had to go back and name a match, I love the triple threat matchup from WrestleMania 19 in Seattle between Trish, Jazz, and Victoria. I feel like that match itself was a really good way to showcase the women's division. It was a Monday Night Raw at the time. You
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was the best kind of women's match for that time period. It was a little bit later. It was Survivor Series 2002 with Victoria versus Trish Stratus. It was just like the hardcore match, I think it was, and it was
know? Oh
just such
yeah,
a brutal match that was just encapsulated how good women wrestling was going to become later on in the future.
definitely was. Yeah, that match was pretty brutal. I watched that match. I think when I was like 9 years old. So, but definitely that was a good wrestling match. Hardcore, something different, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then even at the time, Lita had if fans didn't know this already, I think people would have known by now that Stephanie McMahon was actually women's champion back in the year 2000. And the way that she won it, which was a bit ridiculous, because she won it days before the WrestleMania 2000 event that came out in April 2000. And she would hold that one championship for like a good 6 months until she dropped it to Lita in August, thanks to The Rock, you know?
Yeah, I always thought that one was really weird in 2000 when she picks it up. Like, just it's like you've just gave her the belt, especially when you've got like I think they were just waiting for that kind of Lita, Ivory, China, Trish Stratus to kind of get fully trained up more. Um, but yeah, it was just a weird transition period between Jacqueline and Lita for Stephanie McMahon to have it.
Yeah, definitely was a time period. And who could I forget this though? In 1999, when Ivory was the women's champion, and then she had the match against the Fabulous Moolah at No Mercy 1999, and the Fabulous Moolah beat her. Wow, okay, this is going back, because I think back in some time period, the Fabulous Moolah was the women's champion for about 10 years, about a decade long.
Yeah, I think. obviously that happening in 1999 was a bit weird for Fabulous Moolah, but that was like during that time when like she was giving birth to like the hand and stuff like that. So you kind of get it. But yeah, Fabulous Moolah was a great wrestler back in like the 70s and 60s and stuff like that. But in 1999, she was a really old woman.
Yeah, that's true. I think by far the oldest women's champion in history. So yeah, well, it's still pretty cool. It was interesting to see like the Faziola become a champion even during the Attitude Era. Because it was like, wow, that's something unexpected. So yeah,
Yeah, I think it's just it was one of those kind of left wing things that they just done during the Attitude Era. Like you says, Fabulous Moolah was, I think the first time she held the belt was like 1955, 56 or something. She held it for like 10 years. So it was a long time after when she first got it.
yeah, it definitely was. That's pretty crazy. And I think definitely we can all agree that, in 2004, December 2004, when Raw had the main event of Lita versus Trish Stratus for the Women's Championship belt, that really set the platform for anyone's match after that to come. Because that was history making itself. I stayed up. I think I was like watching Monday Raw. I didn't know to expect the main event that night, December 6th. And I remember I had school the next day because I was still young too. I was about maybe 11 years old. And just being able to watch Trish Stratus and Lita in that main event. And how good that match is. I mean, you saw Lita take that amazing bump outside the ring when she did that suicide dive and landed on her neck. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, definitely. Like that 2004 period, like I'd probably say like starting end of 2002 on to like a 2004, 5, 6, with like Mickey James, a lot of Lita, Trish Stratus, Jazz. Those matches that they had was just insane. But that bump that Lita took just looked like it would have been the sorest bump ever.
Yeah, it definitely would have been. Oh man. And it's pretty crazy because let's see. I think 2005 wasn't really too bad, but wasn't really that good of a match because I think Trish was the women's champion throughout the entire year of 2005. But then when Mickey James came onto the scene, and then they had that rivalry when she was the crazy girl at the time, I guess if you want to call it that way, and then that match at WrestleMania 22 in Chicago. That match to me was one of the best women's matches I've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely that Mickey James match at WrestleMania 22 was insane. Like it was like because Trish Stratus was the champion for
Well over a
the
year.
whole of
Yeah.
2005 right into 2006. So when she went up against somebody that you could believable that she was going to beat, because at that time it was only really Lita or Victoria who wasn't in the company just at that point. It was only the two that you could really see her going up against. And when she went up against Mickey James, it was just a moment waiting to happen to make it just a great match at Mania.
That's true. It definitely was. I gotta admit though, because also during the invasion era in 2001 when the ECW SW invaded the WWE during that time period, you saw these women like Tori Wilson, Stacey Keebler, you even had Jazz, who was formerly known as an ECW woman, had made her debut at the Star Series 2001. And I thought even though I did not think that Tori Wilson and Stacey Keebler were much wrestlers, more like managers, that sort. But when Jazz came in, I feel like that needed to at least elevate the women's division, more.
Definitely, Jazz is a great wrestler, and she's still out there working to this day. But like, I think Tori Wilson is somebody that's like really underrated. Like she goes on to have really great matches. She looks good in the ring, and she actually like is believable. Like people want to see her as well, especially at that time. I think she was just like the full package. She had some good matches. She could have those brand panties matches and also go put on like just a good wrestling match as well. So just like Trish, I would say she's like a really good like wrestler for that time, like a women wrestler for that time.
That's true, definitely. And for me, I really enjoyed the Broad Pig matches. I'm not gonna lie, those type of matches, I'm pretty sure anybody would. So yeah, they were pretty much entertaining as far as like every time she got in the ring, or even Stacey got in the ring.
Yeah, I was a teenager at that point as well, so it was good to watch at that point in my life.
It definitely was. I agree with you there on that. And then like, let's see. And then we had it's on six where Etta Forgiven, which I was fairly surprised though because when Trish Stratus announced that was gonna be her last match in her hometown Toronto, she wanted to have against Lita. I felt that was a good way to go out, but I felt like it kind of ended too soon. I feel like it could have prolonged it more her career, you know.
No, definitely. I think it could have went on like at least a couple of more years, but I think at that time she was just burnt out from obviously the amount she's done in her career. She pretty much was the only women wrestler that people recognised and watched for like 4 years at that time.
That's true. Definitely was. Definitely was. And then, of course, who could have forget about Molina when she came out to the scene? It's hard to admit at first, even though she was just a manager. But then when she really came into her own Monday Night Raw, in February 2007, she had won the Women's Championship. She was able to go walk into WrestleMania 23 as the Women's Champion, defended against Ashley Mazzaro at the time. And I think Molina, to me, is one of the great Women's Champions, too, you know?
No, definitely. I was never really a big Molina fan at that time. Like she wasn't really somebody that I would go out my way to watch or anything like that. But she was kind of like, again, she was that transitional like Mickey James kind of style, going into like the kind of further on in the 2000 era before obviously we get better women wrestling.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely agree with you on that too. You know, I didn't really see her as like a marquee superstar, like at the beginning of her career, which the first couple of years. But I think once she started feuding with Beth Phoenix in 2008, you know, I think that's where we really saw how good she was. You know.
Yeah, I think when Beth Phoenix starts to come in, like the kind of our first reign in 2007 and stuff like that is when we start getting a what would lay the foundation. So Trish Stratus is obviously the foundation for modern women wrestling, but then Beth Phoenix starts to build on top of that. Of you can be a good worker and still be able to look like glam and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you on that. And I mean, Beth Phoenix, oh man, she definitely, you know, is already a WWE Hall of Famer, and she accomplished a lot. You know, besides being one of the first, well, I think no, not the first, but the second woman to have competed in the men's Royal Rumble match in 2010. So that was pretty historic making as well. You know, along with China did it first in 1999. And even speaking of China, it's pretty crazy how like in 1999 she competed in one Royal Rumble matchup, competed in the King of the Ring, won the Intercontinental Champion by beating Jeff Jarrett. I think Jeff Jarrett's last match at the time in that Good Housekeeping match before he went to WCW. I mean, I think China was pretty much on fire. That was the year of China, 1999. You know, believe it or not.
Yeah, China was so underrated as well. Like she goes on at WrestleMania, not WrestleMania, Royal Rumble 2000 has that match with Jericho, and I think it's Hardcore Holly, and she steals the show. Like she was on par with any male wrestler at that time, which was so weird to see because it was always like you would get Undertaker, Rock, Billy Gunn, Jericho, and stuff like that. But then you think China's just a big enough star that you could believe that she could take on any man on that roster at that time.
Yeah, definitely was. Definitely was. I gotta give a lot of credit to China if we actually get into the ring with men and just like going all out. I mean, even one of my favorite matches with China has to be from when at Fully Loaded. This is kind of weird, but I'm bringing this up to the point because it was a match before the DX name, I believe, at the time, and it was her and Mr. Ass versus Road Dogg and S Pac, and she held her own that matchup. You know, she really did.
Yeah, it's and even the King of the Ring 1999. Her against Road Dogg was such a good match. Like it told a story. You just totally forgot it was like a man against a woman. It was just two wrestlers in a ring, which is one of the best compliments I think you can give any wrestler. You don't look at them as a man against a woman.
That's true, definitely. And I believe that there's one woman that is heavily underrated, but not really, you know, talked about so much, and that's Molly Holly. Yeah, believe it or not, Molly Holly first came in as one of the, you know, Holly cousins for Hardcore and Crash. You know, she was just a manager, but when she really got to her own, and even the Italian too, when she beat with Trish Stratus, and she came with King of the Ring 2002 in Columbus, Ohio. And I feel like I don't know, she was a multiple time champion, but nobody really gave her enough credit, you know, as far as like her in race skills go, you know.
I think that's the same to this day. Like, a lot of people just overlook Molly Holly. For some reason, I always think her just as like the Hurricane. I don't know why he comes to my mind. I know they had like a little feud, but like that's what just. I think it was WrestleMania 17 they had a feud, and that's what just comes to my mind when I think about Molly Holly.
That's true, exactly. Even though her other gimmick as Mighty Molly, like sidekick goes, it was a pretty funny gimmick. I feel like that was heavily underrated as well. Because that actually worked. I found that pretty entertaining as far as that duo goes.
And during this time as well, you had arguably one of the better female wrestlers coming out of it. So, Gail Kim, 2003, she first won the WWE Championship, which she goes on to have like a great career in like TNA, Impact Wrestling later on. But she's like a really underrated wrestler for WWE. A lot of people don't think she was in there back in 2003.
That's true. That's definitely true. Gail Kim is definitely one of those like really amazing wrestlers. I mean, her first night on Monday Night Raw, she won the Women's Champion. It's pretty historic right there.
But the thing I think the worst part of obviously about women's wrestling at this time is just nobody took it serious. From that, the period that we're talking about tonight is like 1997 to 2007, and nobody really took it serious. By the end of it, like 2007, people were starting to pay attention to it, but at the start, like they had to have China wrestling the men because there wasn't really any women there to be believable,
Yeah.
which is horrible to think now when you've got a roster full of great women wrestlers, and then back then it's just like people were really just missing out on wrestlers. Like I would love to see China, and if she was there today, like her starting her career in like NXT or something, how would it have panned out? Would she have still been like this, going up against the men and stuff like that? I would have loved to have seen what would have happened today.
That's true. Definitely true. I mean, if China wasn't around today, I would love to see a dream match between her and Nia Jax. I feel like that match would have been really money making.
Yeah, or her and somebody like Rhea Ripley, or going against like a Charlotte Flair or something like that. I think those styles would really go because the big, strong style against like the more technical style. I think it would really, really go off against each other.
That's true. Definitely. Like, I'm glad that I think what was it? Less than 2 years ago at SummerSlam, we had the Charlotte Flair Trish Stratus matchup. Even though Trish Stratus is like, getting pretty old, but at that age, she proved that she could really hang with Charlotte Flair for about 10, 20 minutes. That match was a really good match that night.
Yeah, I think Trish Stratus is obviously. I think she could have still been a wrestler to this day and put on good matches. Like she's just an insane ring worker. She held the women's division for pretty much that whole period. Is what made the women's division really mean something. And if you ask somebody about women's wrestling from the 2000s or the early 2000s, they'll say Trish Stratus.
That's true. Definitely true. I believe that as well. And like, I don't know. I think as far as one of the worst women's matches go, this is my opinion. I think would have to be WrestleMania 15, the match between Sable and Tori for the women's champion. It didn't really tell much of a story, and then he had this big Amazon woman, Nicole Bass, which I didn't know much about. I still don't know much about this very day, that came in and helped her retain the championship.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff like during that period that was questionable and like weird, like like just a lot of matches that were just really bad women wrestling matches. A lot of them, if you remember, it was just like slapping and just like rolling around the ring till somebody, especially you got a lot of that with like the cat.
Yeah.
That kind of was just like slapping each other. They rolled around the ring and that was like it. The match was done.
That's true. Oh man, I forgot about the cat. Wow. I can't wish she was women's champion too at the time. Oh man.
Yeah, when I was preparing for this show, I was looking back at the women's champion. I seen the cat, and I was like, I really forgot about the cat even being the champion at any point.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like how Deborah was a champion when she somehow won it from Sable in Sable's last night in WWE in a reverse style bra and panties match. So yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and I think the bra and panty stuff, like I said, as a teenager, I enjoyed it. but it was too much. Like, see, when you look back when you're older, you're like, oh, this is embarrassing. Like, there's far too much, like, just, okay, we're going to have, like, two women wrestle and it's brand panties, or, like, the Cyber Sunday, Taboo Tuesday kind of thing. They'll be like, okay, let's spin the wheel. And it's like it's like a mud pit match or brand panties is pretty much the only options you get.
Exactly, that's true. I gotta believe it. Let me throw this monkey wrench in there. Like, let's say if they still had the pay-per-view Cyber Sunday or Taboo Tuesday around, and they had the choices between what kind of women's match you want to see, or what stipulation, or what women's championship belt you want to see on the line. Let's see, how would you think about it? You know,
Whistle for like a Cyber Sunday Taboo Tuesday.
yeah,
If like for
yeah,
today's
from
women,
starting off
yeah.
today for women's division. You know,
Oh, from somebody to, like, if I could pick anybody, a dream match for me to watch would be Rhea Ripley against somebody like Trish Stratus or against Lita, because I'm a mark for Rhea Ripley, so it would be against her, against one of those kind of classic superstars, and it would be just in like a submission match, or like an Iron Man / woman match, something just like really like cool and physical to watch. And I think somebody like Lita or Trish Stratus going against like a Rhea Ripley from today would pull that off. Just insane.
that's true. I believe that as well. That definitely would be a good match. Yeah, hopefully we get to see it one day. Hopefully, keep our fingers crossed. You know. I,
Yeah, I think the Trish Stratus and stuff like that are probably, well, they're in their 40s now, so I'm guessing they're probably a little bit pushing it to be coming back nowadays. But you don't know. Edge just came back at 47, so you never
That's
know.
true. I mean, you got guys like Edge, who was recently won a Royal Rumble for the number one spot, mind you. That hasn't been done since Chris Benoit and Tony Khan, you know. So it's definitely possible, you know. It really is.
Yeah, I like, compared to just today's wrestling, compared to like the old kind of style, it's just insane to look at, because you've got like the Women's Royal Rumble match, you've got so many women's championships. You look at NXT, it's just like the place to be to watch great women's wrestling. And then you look back and it was just like Trish Stratus, Ashley Massaro, Lita, Victoria, just like these people here and there. It's so weird to think how far women's wrestling came in such a short period of time.
That's true. Definitely that. And speaking of Victoria, though, she was a really dominant women's champion. I gotta believe she's one of my favorite top five women's champions of that era. And how did you feel about the match when her and Molly Holly had at WrestleMania 20 and she ended up shaving Molly Holly's head?
I really liked that. I thought it was something just out of left field, something different. I liked something similar was the Edge and Kurt Angle storyline with it, when they shaved Kurt Angle's head. Obviously, it wasn't the same quality of match, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was so cool. At that time as well, it was like a lot of vanity, like you need to keep your hair and stuff like that, and then getting it shaved was just, it was just so fun to watch, especially being at like WrestleMania and stuff like that as well. But yeah, I think Victoria's one of the best women's wrestlers from that kind of time. She's the only person that really challenged Trish Stratus at that point as well.
That's true. That's definitely true. And even back in November 2003, when they had the Raw Roulette, that time they got Bischoff was the general manager, and they spun the wheel, and we got Lita versus Victoria inside the steel cage match. I believe that was the first women's steel cage match ever, and that was pretty amazing itself too. You know.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, with like steel cage matches, for some reason at that point it was only kept for like obviously the male competitors, but they could have added so much more to women's matches by putting them in that steel cage, making them feel more like something mattered instead of from just being like this match that was on. And at that point as well, I was more surprised that they didn't have a steel cage match that was brand panties as well.
That's true. That would have been pretty interesting in my point. Yeah, but it's pretty crazy though, you know, like looking back at this era of wrestling was, you know, it was a bit weird, even though during the Attitude Era, they definitely had the highest ratings, but I still felt like the women's division itself entirely was definitely heavily underrated. It wasn't worked as much, and it just felt like kind of like a forgotten thing, you know?
I totally agree. I don't think anybody really, even to this day, like they don't really rate that point for like women's history, like the wrestling history of women. Like even though the history of the WWE Women's Championship goes all the way back to like 1956, if you were to ask me or a normal wrestling fan, could you name the women's wrestlers that have won it since then? You'd probably say like the Fabulous Moolah, and that'd be it. Like it would Trish Stratus. It starts to come at that point, but it is such an underrated point in the kind of women's history, and especially as well if you look at like TNA, ROH, there's the different promotions at that time that were doing really cool wrestling. Like TNA didn't even get a women's championship till 2009, but they had good women's matches at that point as well.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. 100%. Let me ask you a couple of questions here, then we'll, end this episode here. One question number one. If you felt like if you take, you know, one of today's best women's wrestlers, who would you say is on the top as far as like the best women's wrestler out of any wrestling show?
So who's the best women's wrestler from
Yeah, your
today?
opinion from any brand.
It would need to be Rhea Ripley just because I'm a mark for her, man. I think she's the best women's wrestler that's came around in the past 4 years. I would say she's the best.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. In my opinion, I would say,
What would
in my opinion, I would definitely say Kaylee Ray. Is Freeze won the WWE UK Women's Champion. She is well now the longest champion on her current roster by now. And yeah, man, she wasn't defended as much because of this whole pandemic thing, but her match is really good overall. They are.
Yeah, I've not really checked out a lot of NXT UK. I don't know why. I just don't really have time to watch it. I normally catch up on it. At one point, I'll just sit down and I'll watch like the the best matches from a couple of months of it. I just don't really sit down and catch up on it and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely understandable. Same here too. Let's see another question. If you had to pick one of today's best female wrestlers, in your opinion, is Rhea Ripley, and like you said, you had to take her and go up against a old generation wrestler, Trish Stratus. What kind of match would you have made it to be?
If I could pick any women's wrestlers to go up with a past one, I would have to pick. It wouldn't be Rhea Ripley. I would pick Sasha Banks, and it would be Sasha Banks to go up against Lita, and I would have them in a ladder match because I think that would be such a cool match. The two of them have quite similar styles, and you could get a really cool
Oh
match from
yeah,
it.
I can definitely see it happening. It definitely happening. I would say for me, I think if I had to pick anyone's wrestler from now, definitely Shayna Baszler. And this is kind of tough. I would say her go up against Beth Phoenix, and I would definitely love to see a submission match. I don't know why, but I think they would have a really good submission match.
Yep.
All right, let's see. Next question. If you had to, take any women's wrestler from that time period, 1997 through 2007, and who would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it would need to be. Uh, really try to think because it's I think I would say Molina and repackage her as just something like she was a good wrestler because of I always just seen her as one of the Johnny Nitro, like Eminem kind of tag team. I never really bothered with her as a champion or anything. I think if you could repackage her as be more like how good a wrestler she is. I don't know how you would repackage her, but I would probably say Melina from that kind of time frame.
That's good. That's definitely interesting. I guess the one wrestler from the past I would take nowadays and repackage her would probably Stacy Keibler. Because I feel like Stacey Keibler is tall. She's a tall woman. I feel like she could have did a lot more and she could have became world champion at least one time in her career.
Yeah, I always forget that she never actually became the women's champion. I always think she was, but I think that's like you always remember like Stacey Cooper, Tori Wilson, all those kind of Dawn Marie stuff like that, all those kind of women at that point. You just forget there was a belt at that point because Trish Stratus always had
Definitely,
it.
that's true. That's definitely true. Even like Tori Wilson, yeah, she should have held the women's champion at least one time too in her career. Because everybody loved Tori Wilson. Tori Wilson was probably one of the most popular one time besides Lita and Trish Stratus, in my opinion. So having posed for Playboy twice, 2 years in a row, and
Yeah, and that's the other weird thing. Like everybody who was ready to become champion, like Ashley Massaro and stuff like that, or Christy Hemme, during that time, they always got like that kind of Playboy cover, which was so weird as well. Like 2000, I think it's 2003 to like 2007. There was always like a Playboy cover of somebody
yeah,
who was going to be the
exactly.
champion.
And then they never actually became the champion. So that was kind of a bit
Yeah,
letdown. I don't know. Oh, speaking of Christianity, though, I don't know. I feel like, well, not taking nothing from Christianity, she obviously did her great work in Playboy. I've seen the photos. I definitely love them. But as far as the in-ring skills, though, I didn't really think she had much potential as far as the in-ring skills were.
no, I didn't believe her. It was during that time with Trish Stratus kind of being the champion for a long time. I didn't believe her to take it off her, or I didn't really believe her being like a champion. I just thought she was just there to be like the Playboy girl to promote
Yeah.
WWE.
Even when
Really.
she won the Diva search in 2004, I felt like I was like, it was cool and all, but it's like her in-ring skills as far as the wrestling goes, like, nah. Even like I wish there was somebody else to pitch for trash that was made 21 and 2005 instead of Christy Hemme.
Yeah, I think that's something that's always going to taint like Trish Stratus's career. She never had like, apart from Lita and Victoria, then you could say Mickey James. Apart from say those three, she never had like a. Even from those three, she never had like a feud that you could be like Charlotte, Sasha Banks, and Bailey. Like she never had like one of those matches, like one of those iconic
Yeah,
matches.
that's definitely true. That is definitely true. All right, last question to end the show here, and this is gonna be talked about now. What is your favorite match as far as the new era of women's wrestling as of right now?
Oh, that's a hard one. There's so many and like I say, right to this day, I don't really look at it as like women wrestling. I just look at it as wrestling because they're just as good or even better than the men. But for me, it would probably be. You know what? I'll pick a newer one. Rhea Ripley against Charlotte last year at WrestleMania. Just they made that match, especially during that COVID period, with no fans, and they just made that match really good. Like you forgot there was no fans there anyway, just because how good the match was at Mania last year. The result, not so much, but how
Oh
good
yeah,
the
I
match
definitely
was.
got to agree 100%. That was an extremely good matchup. They made it work last year. Even though I really wanted Ray Ripley to be Charlotte Flair to retain the NXT Women's Champion, but then I was like, Charlotte have to win it and get herself another championship. So I was like, okay, but it was still a good match regardless, though.
Yeah, I just think it was just the way it worked, and for everybody last year as well, the way it worked during that kind of COVID, nobody there performance centre WrestleMania. I know they've got a few people, well, a couple of thousand people coming this year, but that last year one has to go down in history of whoever worked at
Yeah,
that.
it
It's a
definitely
great
was.
worker.
Oh man, let's see. For me, I think so far of this era, the greatest wrestling match, I would say. Hmm, yeah, this is a tough question, even for myself. I would believe it would have to be. Hmm. Oh, it's tough. Uh, I would say it have to be Sasha Banks and Bailey's Iron Man match from Takeover Respect 10 o'clock. The 30-minute Iron Man match.
Yeah, that was that period as well with kind of Sasha Banks, Bailey down in NXT. They were just
Oh
putting
yeah,
on
it
killer
definitely was.
matches every every single week, which was insane. And NXT still do that. The women are putting on like Io Shirai and stuff like that. the War Games that was recent. They just put on great matches nearly every week.
That's
Every
true.
takeover was a great
Definitely
match.
true. But I think the one woman right now I want to see push more in, let's see, NXT. I want to see them push Dakota Kai more. I feel like Dakota Kai could really be a good singles competitor, even without Raquel Gonzalez, and we could become the NXT Women's Champion one day if she could beat Io Shirai.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Raquel Gonzalez is going to be huge because she has that kind of China look to her. So she's like the bigger woman that just looks like she can beat anybody that she goes up against, man or woman.
That's true. That's true. Even I was impressed. I was impressed when her and Rhea Ripley got into that last one standing match at New Year's Evil this past January. That match, they tore the house down with that matchup. You know.
Yeah, that was a really great match. And then you've got like Impact Wrestling, who's got like Pruzo and stuff like that are having great matches week in and week out as well. So it's a great time for women to get into women's wrestling. If you don't watch it or anything like that, it is a really great time to get in and kind of start watching it.
Definitely true. Let's see. What would you want to see as far as the Raw Women's Championship goes for WrestleMania 37 this year?
Also for WrestleMania 37, I want Ahsoka versus Rhea Ripley, but I know Charlotte was kind of saying something about it, so I'm guessing you're probably going to get Charlotte, Ahsoka, and Rhea Ripley, just so we can get a really great match and kind of make the title mean something again, because at this minute it just doesn't mean anything. Ahsoka's had it for so long, everybody forgets she's there. So I would love them to make it mean something, and again, I would love to see them make the women's tag team championships mean something as well. Like, just give them a little bit of prestige.
As far as the women's tag team championships go, Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax are definitely like making it known well out there. I believe they got the championship match tonight at NXT against Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai. So I'm definitely gonna be watching that match. It should be a pretty good matchup, you know.
Yeah, I think as much as I'm not a big fan of Nia Jax and stuff like that at the minute, or in ring work, I don't really like it, but she's a heel. I'm guessing that's what she's trying to do, and they're kind of making those titles mean something. At least they're giving them to somebody instead of from just having them as a side kind of piece. I'm happy they're actually using them as a story as well.
But I would prefer that Shayna Baszler go back to being a singles competitor and go after a singles championship belt, you know? I feel like that was Shayna Baszler was more dominant when she was that year-long title reign as NXT Women's Champion. You know, she was really dominant. She was beating up literally every woman on the NXT roster, you know, at the time.
Yeah, back when she was on NXT, she was one of my favourite women wrestlers. I've kind of forgot about her just because she's put in that tag team that she's quite random anyway. But I really think it would have been great if we could have seen her against Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania. Like, those two styles would have really worked, or they could have put the both of them in a tag team, and that would have gave the titles kind of more prestige, because it's like that kind of MMA technical style of wrestling, which would have been really cool.
Definitely true. Even if I'm like really like happy to like say that like when Bianca Belair won the Royal Rumble and she chose Sasha Banks this past Friday Night SmackDown for the SmackDown was changed for WrestleMania. I feel like that match can make history for itself because that's the first time two African American women would ever fought for the championship at WrestleMania. That's huge itself, you know.
Yeah, I think it's just insane to think it's took this long to get two women to kind of main event a WrestleMania that you're really looking forward to the match, but as well for two African American women to be main eventing. It's insane that it's took this long to get to that point, but I'm really excited for it. Like, I'm a big fan of Bianca Belair. Sasha Banks, not so much. I'm not a big fan, but I like her in-ring work. But I really hope Bianca Belair gets that belt, and just it'll be a great run, especially her gimmick and stuff like that all works. And I think she's just at that sweet point when she's just before she's really big, and just like she needs the belt just to push her over that little last hill to make her a worldwide known talent instead of from just being like a kind of wrestling fans talent.
That is true. So like, hopefully, like if WrestleMania is able to get a couple thousand fans there, hopefully about 20,000-30,000 as they predict, that'd be really good. to have that moment with back to Belair. If she does win the championship at WrestleMania and having that moment, that would be really nice.
Yeah, giving her that moment, like especially if you look at last year when Drew McIntyre won the belt, and it's like there's nobody there. The atmosphere was it was so awkward to see them on the ropes, like cheering themselves on when nobody's there. But at least having a couple of fans, like even 100 or something, would make it a little bit more believable
Yeah, exactly.
instead of from just nobody there.
Yeah, speaking of Drew McIntyre, man, I'm kind of bummed out that he lost the WWE Championship, especially to The Miz, to Cash Money in the Bank. And then, well, at least now he's WWE Champion now, which I'm happy about because Bob Lashley definitely deserves it. So I'm predicting either Brock Lesnar does come back, face Lashley, and finally get that match that everybody wants to see for years, or if we get Drew McIntyre with Bob Lashley for the championship WrestleMania, that would be a really amazing match itself,
Yeah, definitely. I've watched Bobby Lashley since he was the ECW champion back in 2007 or something like that. He's had a really interesting career, and I think it's long overdue that he actually held the main belt. And he looks like a champion. He's going to turn heads when he walks in a room. It's the guy who he's probably, apart from Roman Reigns, he probably is the only guy on the roster who looks like a wrestler, like a champion.
Speaking of Roman Reigns, I actually did a bonus episode the other day about who was the better heel champion, Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar. I picked Roman Reigns because of the time that Roman Reigns has defended his Universal Champion compared to the time that Brock doesn't defend his Universal Champion during his reign. It makes Roman Reigns seem like the better heel champion. I could be wrong though, but what's your opinion? Who's the better heel champion, Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns?
I love Roman Reigns' heel work. Like it's totally different, obviously, than Brock Lesnar's kind of style of work. I love the way Roman Reigns works and like his attitude and stuff like that. It's insane how they've turned him around from like being booed out the building. But for me, in the question, it would have to be Brock Lesnar. I loved how he brought that kind of prestige to the belt as well, and it was just he'll turn up and wrestle, beat the hell out of somebody, and then go back home. I just thought that was like such, like it got everybody so angry, and even people that obviously wrestling's a work, everybody knows that, but even people that knew it was a work was like, this guy's so annoying, and that what his character was today was just to make everybody like he doesn't really work a lot, he's only a part timer, he turns up when he wants. Everybody was believing it, and he done his job.
That's
perfectly.
definitely true. I gotta admit that Brock Lesnar, was a legit fighter. When he did wrestling matches, he would beat the crap out of his opponents. All the time. I mean, take it from John Cena, him and Cena from SummerSlam 2014, which was, in my opinion, one of the most lopsided championship matches ever because that was pretty much all Lesnar dominate right there. So yeah.
Yeah, it went on for far too long as well. Like just it went on for like, I don't know. It felt like it went on for like half an hour of just Lesnar just throwing this poor. Like, I never felt bad for John Cena in my life, but I was really feeling bad that he was just getting beat during this match. But if Brock Lesnar matches go, you need to go check out the earlier years, like the SummerSlam against The Rock. You've got like the triple threat from Global Warming with Triple H, Rock, and Brock Lesnar. All those kind of younger matches are what sets him up, and he just looks great during them as well.
When he first came to the WWE, I felt like Brock Lesnar. Yes, he had the look, he had the star power. He was like one of the best wrestlers on that time. Even being Kurt Angle, I think that's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches with him and Angle WrestleMania 19, the main event. That has to be, in my opinion, one of the greatest matches I've ever seen.
Yeah, especially the mess up that he does when he nearly breaks his neck, or he does break his neck, whatever. It just looked like agonising pain to especially being in front of all those people, and you mess up.
That was crazy because like you would think that Brock Lesnar got injured, but then Kurt Angle got injured, and he had to go next time go a couple ways. Brock was still here defending champions, on SmackDown during that time period.
Yeah, I think it's that time period, like we've been talking about the women's wrestling between 97 and 2007, but just that time period in wrestling, it's one of the best points. If you could take today's women's wrestling and put it back in there during that great 97 2007 period, it would have been a different level. I think we'd still be living off of how good that time was to this day.
All right. Well, this has been fun, man. I mean, talking about these women's wrestling time period from 1987 to 2007 was definitely fun. But I got a big question for you. How do you feel like joining me next week for next week's episode, next Wednesday?
Yeah, man, my schedule should be round about the same, so it should be fine. I just need to check to make sure I've got time off work and stuff
Definitely,
like that,
man.
but I'd
And because
definitely be up
next
for doing
week,
it again.
I'm excited about this one because next week's episode on God Have Heart Wrestling, we're going to be talking about Stone Cold WrestleMania matches. That's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, man, I'll make sure I'm there for that one. Try and make sure my work works around it so I can give you there because I've got a lot of cool
Yeah, me
WrestleMania
too. That's one
Stone
of the
Cold
biggest.
matches that
I'm
I
excited
really
about
love.
next week's episode. Definitely. All right. Well,
Good man, thanks for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully I can get
yeah,
on next week
definitely.
again and we can talk about that
Definitely, man. It's
Stone
been a
Cold
lot of fun. Pleasure
kind
having
of
you on the
time.
show, man. And definitely, man, you
No
too. And
problem. Enjoy
everybody
the
else,
rest of your
have a
night.
good night. Have a good day. Be safe, everybody. And be sure to tune in for April 20th live YouTube for God of Heart Wrestling. I'll be here. Have a good night, man.